everyone. We had the great privilege of interviewing Mr. Frank Basile, and he's awesome, isn't
It sure was a privilege. That was special.
Yes. And so there are so many facets of Frank's life, and he's done so many things with his life that it has been turned into a two-parter. So we would like you to please now enjoy part one of Mr. Frank Basile. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of No Title Needed, coming to you from the beautiful Feinstein's Cabaret at the Hotel Carmichael in Carmel, Indiana, US of A. I am Cynthia Collins.
And I'm Scott Osborne.
We are your co-hosts, and today we have a pretty remarkable person sitting across from us.
I agree with that.
Yes, Mr. Frank Basile. Frank, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me to your show.
Oh my gosh, you are pretty damn awesome.
Yes, sir.
Now,
man,
do you
but
know? Now, listen. Let me ask you something. Do you know Frank before today?
I have had a great opportunity to get to know Frank over the last 8 to 10. I think I first found out about
8 to 10 years.
8 to 10 years ago.
I think that's right.
And,
Yes.
and
Okay.
This man, if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't even gotten accepted to the school I went to.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know
and he
that.
played a big factor in it.
Oh, okay.
Well, actually, Meg, his mom,
Yes.
invited me to Panera Bread, which is kind of my office, retirement office. And she mentioned that her son wanted to be a great sculptor. And so on and so on. I said, we have a great school of art and design here, Heron.
Yep.
And so you two went there, and I called Valerie Eichmeyer, who was the dean at the time, and I said, these two people are going to be coming to talk with you. And it's, cut a long story short, 5 or 6 years later, he graduated and has received remarkable commendations from everyone, including the current dean, Greg Hall, who was kind of a mentor while you were there with a couple of others.
Yes.
And knew that he would have a blossoming career, which he has had right here in Carmel.
Yep.
So I'm glad that I was able to play a small part in that.
You played a huge part in it, and I'm very thankful for it.
Then I have to tell you, a few years later, well, it was right after you had graduated,
Mm-hmm.
she'd asked for another meeting. So we met there, and she said, we met here about 6 years ago, and I asked for your advice. And I was thinking to myself, I hope the advice turned out okay. But I was kind of looking to see if there was a gun or something, knowing how things are these days. And she mentioned that you had gone there and had graduated and were very happy and so on and so forth. And it just so happened that evening I was giving a talk to Heron donors about Valerie Eichmeyer's career. And I started with that story about how you went there and it started your blossoming career and stuff like that, and the part that Valerie played in that. So it was a great lead-in for my talk. And I also happened to mention that I was at my Panera Bread office, and when I left the lectern, Martha Hoover came up to me and she said, why are you meeting people at Panera Bread? Don't you know there's a Cafe Prédature around the corner? I said, I know that, Martha, and we have lunch there every single day. I said, but I can't meet people there and maybe just have coffee or something and stay there for 2 or 3 hours. It wouldn't be fair to your servers or to you for me to take up that much time. I said, besides that, it's pretty loud. My hearing isn't that good.
But you did, because we got together with you a few times at the Paddock. You love
Yes, I love it. Yeah, every day we have lunch there.
Yeah.
I just got to say thank you for what you have done for me over the years. And I appreciate all the influence you've helped me.
You know what? Your thanks, your success is my thanks.
Oh,
Well, that's the kind of person you
thank
are.
you.
You are. You're because you are a philanthropist. And I cannot say your name without Katrina's name. It's
Sure.
Frank and Katrina Basile, your lovely wife. And so the two of you just, because that's how Actors Theater of Indiana met you. They met you together. And
That's right.
ripping up the dance floor at the Indiana Historical Society.
That's right.
When we were doing a Cole Porter night there.
And you all had just come here from New York.
That's right. And we thought, who are these two people? Absolutely just cutting a rug on the dance floor. You guys were fantastic.
Well, you all were playing such fabulous music that it just motivated us to do
No,
it.
you're so good.
I
But
got to comment on also to add to that one. my first experience with the interaction of ATI was the past costume runway.
Oh, and Frank was part of the
That's right.
$1 Million Quartet guys.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was so
Yes.
much fun.
Yes, when everybody
was
dressed
fun.
up.
That was so
Yeah.
much fun.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right, let's get down to the nitty gritty here, shall we?
Sure.
We're walking down memory lane, but you have really accomplished so much in your life. I know you were born in New Orleans.
Yes.
Did I say that right?
You did.
In New Orleans. You went to Tulane.
Yes.
I just know this from getting to know you. Your family was, didn't you have a bunch of sisters? In your,
5 of them.
yeah. So your family was pretty big, and you were not that well off.
No,
You
we
really
not.
weren't. You really pulled up your bootstraps, and you were a self-made human being, in my opinion. And then you worked for Glick, didn't you?
Yes.
And did that kind of start you off? You know what I mean?
Yes. It really, working for Glick for 33 years was a great experience in my life. And Gene Glick was not only my boss, but also my mentor. And I learned so much from him about working with not-for-profit organizations, philanthropy, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. And you give speak. I mean, Frank, I know you go and you talk. I mean, you're asked to speak in so many places. You were just talking about that, that's one example when you were
Right.
talking about the Dean of Heron
Right.
School. I mean, you speak everywhere.
And that's really my main avocational interest through the years has been professional speaking. And it would not have occurred if it were not for one particular incident back in the mid-1957s. 1950s, yes. It would not have occurred at all.
Yeah.
What happened was it was a Spanish class that I was in, and in those days, each student would read. And when it was my turn to read, my hands would shake. I would get, my voice would crack. I would break out in sweats and so on. So at the end of this particular class, the teacher came up to me, who was Brother Amity, a Christian brother, and he said, "Frank, you can't go through life deathly afraid of speaking. You have to do something." And I said, "What do you suggest? Take a speech class?" He said, "No." He says, "You're too far gone for that." He says, "You need something more intense." And I'm thinking to myself, what is he talking about? He says, "You need to join the debating team."
Oh.
I said, "No, I can't do that." And of course, he prevailed. Thank God he prevailed. And as Katrina later in life said, she said, "Don't you know how to say no to anything?" But I finally said yes to that. It was the single most important decision one of the most important decisions I've ever made was to join a debating team. And I joined with 3 other people who were also new to speaking. And the coach worked with us so well that at the end of our junior year, we were the first team ever for that school to win the Louisiana State Debating Championship. That changed my life. That enabled me to participate in organizations where communication is so important, and I've ended up doing around 1,400 speeches and so on and so forth. But none of that would have happened if it were not for Brother Amity taking the time and the trouble to do that. And so many things in my life, as with many other people, resulted from somebody else taking the lead. And I followed.
A helping hand.
Yeah.
A helping
Thank
hand.
goodness he saw something in you.
That's right. That's right.
That
And-
we wouldn't have Frank Basile that we know today if it wasn't for
And I
that.
wouldn't be sitting here.
No, and you do make you are asked to speak a lot of places. But you and Katrina, you do a lot of stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how you have time to fit everything in. Now, you said you guys have slowed down a little,
Yeah, we have.
but the travel is unbelievable. I mean, the places you've been.
Well, the travel is the same way. It was a motivating experience that started us with the travel.
Yeah.
We were on an Ambassador trip. The Ambassador is a local travel club. And it was going to Greece. And it was in the early 1980s, I believe. And it was the morning of the first morning of the trip. We were in Athens. And it was a breakfast of all of the participants. And in the middle of the breakfast, this fellow gets up and he says, "Excuse me, folks, but I have a class to teach in 15 minutes. And this was in Athens. And so when he leaves, his wife turns to the group and she said, I should explain that years ago, he and I discussed traveling more and doing other things we wanted to do, but we decided to put it off until we had more money and time, and we decided we would do it after he retired. Well, he retired last year, the same time as he had Alzheimer's. Wow. And he said, and now we regret that we put it off all these years.
Because he
And
thought
Katrina
so
and
he
I-
thought he had a class.
Yes,
he had a
yes.
class.
And Katrina and
And
I
he didn't,
turned
of
to each other and
course.
said, we need to travel now.
Yes.
We remembered what John Lennon said, life is what happens to us when we're busy making other plans. And it's so true.
Great quote.
We put away all of these things. We put them off, things that we know we should be doing, we would love to do when it's until the time is right.
No,
It's a better up and all of this stuff. When it really doesn't make any, you do it now.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And you guys have traveled thousands of places.
And at the same time, I'd read an article in Newsweek magazine that quoted Francois Mitterrand, who was the former president of France. And on his deathbed, he said, we only know when it's too late that the marvel is the passing moment. That's what really counts,
I had
being
a great-
here and now.
I had a great moment like that just this year, saying to my parents while we were running an event, and these really are the good times.
Well,
And,
you'll
and
look
to
back and you'll
recognize
see
it
that.
at that moment.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
really to recognize it at that moment versus realizing it months later. It was these. And we were working. It wasn't fun, but like it really was.
Yeah. All right, we got to take a quick break.
Okay.
And then we're coming back with Mr. Frank Basile. Thank you, Frank.
Hey everyone, welcome back to No Title Needed with our awesome guest, Mr. Frank Basile. Frank, thank you so much again.
Well, thank you, Cindy and Scott, for inviting me. This is
Happy to have you.
We were talking before the break. We were talking about your travels and how you came up in the world under Eugene Glick,
Yes.
your mentor. But you write as well.
Yes.
And how many? Articles, books.
Well,
Have you run the gamut on that?
Well, maybe. I'm not sure at this point.
Yeah.
But it all started, incidentally, with WFYI, and probably neither one of you were born at the time that they were on television with their auction show. And I was the MC one auction night, and a woman named Nancy Cotterill was one on the antique board. And during an intermission, Nancy came up to me and said, in a few weeks, some of us are starting a new publication in Indianapolis called the Indianapolis Business Journal. Would you be interested in writing a column? And like my wife has later said, I don't know how to say no. And so I said yes. And it ended up that I wrote that weekly column for 20 years.
Wow.
From the very first issue in 1980 to 2000. And absolutely loved it. I wrote on subjects, mainly management, but also personal skills like time management, human relations, goal setting, and communications, the key personal skills. And at that time, I quoted a survey of CEOs who attributed their success, 80% of their success, to personal skills, only 20% to technical skills, what they knew about the job. And so this was so important.
Yeah.
And that column led, after I finished writing that column in 2000, for 7 years, I wrote a quarterly travel column. And all of that led to 14 books. And one of which was a book that you had alluded to earlier, and that is on travel and things like that. But even more than that, it led to many speaking engagements.
More speaking.
More speaking engagements, yes, particularly in Indianapolis. And so I have Nancy Cotterill, as well as the IBJ, to thank for getting me started.
Thank you for being here for No Title Needed. Come on over to Feinstein's, see a show. Wide variety of entertainment here. They are have something going on almost all the time. So it's not just cabaret acts. It's all kinds of things happening in this space. So do yourself a favor. Come on over to Feinstein's Cabaret at the Hotel Carmichael and treat yourself and others to a show. Well, we hope you enjoyed part 1 of our interview with Mr. Frank Basile. And
Tune in next week for part 2.